Hey there, gaming enthusiasts, gaming fans, and gamers in general. This is Jesus from Jesus Gaming and Podcast. Welcome to a new brand episode. And after last week's double header, I never thought that I would bring in a triple header episode for this week's gaming podcast. I'm going to be diving in. If you haven't watched the latest video that went live this past Monday about the game called Forgottenlectures, Fall of a Dynasty, or it is Fall of a Dynasty, developed by the Forgottenlectures team. I'm going to give you a quick reintroduction as part of this first segment. Then, yes, it is obligated to have our 25 cents on everything that had transcended since the launch of the game Palworld by Pocket Pair. And I have been trying to have time to talk about Anthem. And yes, that game by BioWare as developer, Electronic Arts as the publisher. That great game that defies and denies to die. So let's get started. Welcome. Thank you so much for your support. Now, you have been noticing that I have been doing some content about Fall of a Dynasty or Forgottenlectures Fall of a Dynasty game. And this is a game that I was invited like a few weeks ago to actually try. And I made this introductory long video. And also I made it some shorts. And this podcast is also included as part of my arrangement for doing content for the game in general. Basically, the game is based on a visual novel made in Austria. The game was developed by that team that they're actually doing the visual novel about a story, and it goes like, as the son and the first in line of the succession of a small but yet religiously influential noble house, you are tossed into the world of intrigue. Arriving at the capital of an allied nation, it is time for meeting your fiancé, a match arranged by your family, whose wars couldn't be more different. Coming from a deeply religious and rural world to a decadent world and conflict-driven superpowers fielding armies and fleets second only to the royal imperial forces, there is so much potential for friction. So basically, Forgottenlectures, Fall of a Dynasty is a game developed in Unity based on a visual novel created from scratch over a period of 18 months. And basically, the game was originally launched as a partial early release on itch.io and then brought into Steam with, I got the opportunity to play almost coincidentally with the launch of the beginning part of the game. So about Forgottenlectures, they are the independent developers that are from Austria, as I said earlier, and they are a team of 3D artists getting into the world of 3D art designs, visual novels, and now obviously in gaming. They started in mid-2022, and basically the rest is history. We got this game that, for surprisingly, it is slated or rated adult-only game by the ESRB. But no, the game is not an ORPO, and I will say it again, the game is not an ORPO. Yes, I know that adult games, mainly if it's not too much violence, it's too much crossing the NORPO thing, including the dating simulator. I think that this game, taken in context, that had like 3 endings, is basically you should follow some scenarios where you actually have your character to be paired either by the fiancé that was in the story's description or the many others alternatives that probably the game will bring in. So I think that the dating simulation aspect and that the characters, they don't look so like an alien or like an anthropomorphic animal. They look like human beings. I think that the ESRB do their definitions. They have to brand or rate the game as an adult only kind of a title. Honestly, I didn't feel intimidated because just because this is my actually first adult only game. I never played an adult only game. I think that games that you haven't tried before and you hear it from of the internet rather than a game store like GameStop or Newegg, etc., can be a little challenging and raise some concerns. But I was up to the challenge. I took the invitation as a challenge for a content creator, as a gamer in general, but I was kind of uneasy after I told my wife that I was trying an auto-only game. She made sure that you had to play this on headphones. You can't have your speaker in full volume because we thought that, oh, it's an auto game. Here goes the Norpo. But no, the surprise is that the game actually, of course, there are some kinkiness or maybe implicit way that you have your characters being in the target or the hero wide or any of the companion that the character can be paired on. But beyond that, you shouldn't expect crossing the Norpo world. So before getting the notion of that, I took this as a challenge for a platform that is so unfriendly with the notion of force or what you expect to have content directed to late teens and adults. I don't want to make this about myself, but Forgottenlectures Falls of a Dynasty happens to be like a more risky game for being an auto only game and really crossing to the Norpo side. I will have accepted anyways because I reject this notion that content creators are being obligated to make content for kids. No, YouTube hasn't said it officially, but late 2022 and early 2023, after many success that YouTube was having for content creators and actually awakened the desire to have YouTube as a proper gaming streaming platform, and then you got all of a sudden moves that practically tells you that YouTube is favoring content for kids. And I don't hate kids. I don't dislike the idea of YouTube promoting kids only or content that are made for kids can have some favoritism in the algorithm. I'm not against that. What I'm against is that the favoritism included that your content is automatically de-evaluated because you're not doing things for kids. And I found that so invasive from the part of YouTube. Like, if I wanted to really have this as a way or my main goal was to actually live off of YouTube or monetize, well, not okay, I'm gonna fix that. This was not like a thing that I was desiring or just thinking about it as a long-term possibility. I was thinking about it, and many content creators that start on YouTube do it too. A short-term goals was short-term goals thinking was part of the frustration, and basically that's what led me to declare my hiatus for most of the 2023 because I hated and I disliked the fact that YouTube favored kids-only content just because they said so. So I think that Forgottenlectures Fall of a Dynasty invitation, I found it as a way to I'm not going to say to give the middle finger to YouTube, but actually being like a misfits and trying to challenge YouTube to actually try to make it more difficult than it is right now because some of my videos triggered copyrights. Those who have seen some past episode might get which triggered the copyright algorithm of YouTube, and copyrights that cannot be objected with fair use, which all of my content use fair use because I'm not using anything that I'm trying to make a money out of it. I am not denying that I don't own the content that I embedded in mine. And no, this is not a content reaction valiantly like some specific content creators, and I'm doing the finger thing like Dr. Evil. But having that as a new challenge and copyright immediately means that your video is not getting recommended by the algorithm, despite I was having a good time since this past few weeks. But I think that I should be more careful. And that was part of the challenge with Forgottenlectures World of a Dynasty. I took it as a challenge to do an online, adult only game, and having it like extremely careful and put it in the public with YouTube. Yeah, I'm inviting you to watch the Monday's video of the first few scenarios that I play, because also I didn't want to go too risky, and while there was no Norpo, but there could be either way, maybe some kinkiness or anything that could trigger some algorithms. So I decided to leave it like that. But either way, I invite you to see the video that was posted this past Monday. Thank you very much, the good people of Forgottenlectures, for the opportunity. And I hope this is not the first, but for many other games that if they have any plans, I would like to be invited again. Thank you very much. And GG's to Forgottenlectures. Pulse of a Dynasty, the beginning, is already available on Steam. Without a doubt of a shout, I think the biggest January 2024 release in gaming world so far belongs to Palworld. This game is made by and published by the Japanese company or group called Pocket Pair. And the game releases officially on January 19 as an early release, being sold for $30 on Steam and included on Xbox Game Pass for Xbox consoles owner, including Xbox One and Xbox Series X and X. So basically, I think that I shouldn't dive in so much in Palworld. I think that much of what I'm going to say is already common knowledge, but I think that I shouldn't just not taking part of the conversation about this game that has taken the gaming world in 2 weeks pretty much by the hand. And again, I think that we should declare already the best launching for January 2024. And until the year goes by, I think that is the best launch of 2024 so far. And we are in January 27 as the recording of this. So basically, Palworld is Pokemon, and we are going to be talking about Pokemon later. Pokemon meets Ark, but also meets Fortnite, but also meets I think that I should say that it mix Monster Hunter 2 in sort of perspective, and meets The Legend of Zelda Breath of the Wild, because of some of the mechanics of the game are so mixed so well in this kind of a category. So I said that I'm recording this on the 27th of January 2024, and so far, I think 3 days ago, Pocket Pair announced that the game in 6 days, not reaching the full week yet, in Steam sales, they're already on 8 millions, my bad, 8 millions copies sold on Steam. Prior to that, it was like 7 millions in 5 days. So it was an increase of 1 million in just a single day. So those numbers are impressive. And more impressive is that the game feels playable despite it is an early release. Remember that early release are games that are basically a sellable beta, so to speak. So it's not a complete experience. You should expect known and unknown errors that the game might have, or developers could have overlooked, or at the time they know that there was a problem with a certain aspect, but they haven't got the root of the problem yet. But the game's still bootable and playable, so there's a warning for gamers that they're actually buying. It's a game that is still in development. It's not on a stable one. And talking about being an early release, the game begins development by 2020, and it was officially presented on 2021. Basically, Pocket Pair has said that they managed to have some of the original assets of their previous game, Craftopia, and they were using like a building engine, and then they decided to move to Unreal Engine 4, and basically from Unreal Engine 4 they decided to move then to Unity. Some says that this was scaling back the game, but Unity has proven to be quite a competitor for Unreal Engine 4, not only because it was more cheaper to have access to graphical tools for game development, but also Unity has proven to be a feasible alternative with and the game doesn't feel less powerful than using Unreal from Epic Games. So the main reason to finally settle in with Unity as per Pocket Pair is that they decided it was more suitable for making the game be truly open world, which basically is one of the good aspects about the game. And with that, they set their mind to have the game released by 2022. Obviously, they failed the deadline, extended it to August 2023. And then again, basically the project became so big that they needed to hire more staff. They need to have or invest in more dedicated servers for launch. And by the new deadline of August 2023, the game was estimated to be at 60% complete. So obviously they won't meet the August 2023 launch period. So basically they were forced to better commit to an early release game rather than a rush stable release and not guaranteed that it will be a stable release. So let's talk about the part of the Pokemon thing. And let's be honest, uh, visually, there are similarities. Since day one, was something that it was not deniable. And I think I'm going to be focusing on this part for the rest of the segment. It was undeniable. All the similarities. The pals, I think the creatures are called pal with the Pokemon. And I think it doesn't help that the same developers called the cell Pocket Pair because Pokemon is the short for Pocket Monster that is known in home towards Japan. And also added to the insult that Pocket Pair are also based in Japan. They are from Shinagawa, Tokyo. So there's no way that people couldn't avoid to be talking about the similarities and being like a jab between or an implicit jab against Pokemon, the Pokemon Company, and Nintendo. But the thing is that Nintendo and also the Pokemon Company cannot go badly to launch their lawyers with a cease and desist letter or suing Pocket Pair because nowadays courts and tribunals, whatever you want to call your courthouse, they're not taking lawsuits just because something look alike another thing so seriously right now. So Nintendo cannot just go and sue Pocket Pair because there are some visual similarities between Pokemons and pals. That is not working anymore in the legal system. So I think that after a week and a half of the release of Palworld, the Pokemon Company finally in January 24 issued a statement, and while not calling or citing the game directly, they acknowledge that they have received many inquiries regarding another games, company games released in January 2024, and we intend to investigate an appropriate measure to address any acts that infringes on intellectual properties related to the Pokemons. So basically, Pocket Pair is already in the radar of Pokemon Company and Nintendo. But again, the Pokemon Company cannot make a legal move about doing cease and desist letter. They can't do a lawsuit. They can't do anything legal because nowadays courthouses or legal experts are not taking just because your illustration looks they have a similarities. You can just be suing people. Yes, I get the notion that Pokemon originally based their own creatures on a Dragon Quest game that I think it was released a few years before or was launched in parallel with Pokemon back in the 90s. But there was some kind of a deal between, at the time, Enix, not Squaresoft. Enix, okay, I'm going to confuse people here. Dragon Quest was originally developed by the Enix company. What we know today as Square Enix was originally Squaresoft, but the game company changed their name to Square Enix after Squaresoft bought Enix and then brought in the Dragon Quest intellectual property as part of their own. So Nintendo was having like an agreement with Enix when Enix was a whole company itself, and I think that indirectly Nintendo could just took advantage of the situation and then make some changes in the designs of some Pokemon that looks and has some similarities with the Dragon Quest game that was launched at the time. So people obviously raised that as an issue that Nintendo might have some kind of hypocrisy going after Pocket Pair when they weren't necessarily being pursued by Enix, and they have the tenacity on doing things that they also have seen, so to speak. I think that Nintendo is now on the wait and see, and probably they are waiting for Pocket Pair to make some wrong moves. But I think the ones that are doing the wrong moves are the gaming community, especially the Pokemon fans that, wow, issues death threats to Pocket Pair staff just because they follow the narrative that they copy Pokemons and then not only copying them, but having them handing weapons and shooting people or shooting themselves. I think it's too much. Yeah, you can say whatever you want about free speech, but free speech shouldn't be free speech if you are threatening someone. And if you are proving that you are threatening someone and you are serious about your threats, I think that you're not entitled on free speech. And making death threats about gaming, sadly, is not new. Sadly, it will continue, and sadly, it is a behavior that needs to be addressed. Definitely needs to be addressed. It's like you can't just have gamers feel so entitled to threat people like that just because they don't like the narrative, they don't like the game, or they feel like the competition is worth to hurt others. If that was the case, I think that Nintendo and Sega could have killed each other back in the 90s if we are going to that idiotic mentality. I have been trying to make some Anthem content like I was doing before my hiatus and the early days of this YouTube channel when I was just Jesus as part of the MGG family. I made a full streaming of a full gameplay of Anthem by BioWare. Electronic Arts, BioWare, Anthem. I want to make a recap of what the games is about, how the development went, how the launch went, and how BioWare's attempt to actually fix the problems and the complaints that many gamers have been having for the game until it was announced that the game will no longer be updated, not gonna be having more new content, and the fixes that we're going to be explaining in this opportunity didn't happen. But why I am bringing all this, I will tell you later. All right, as a recap, Anthem is a online multiplayer RPG game developed by BioWare, the same people that work on the Mass Effect games. Published by Electronic Arts, and the game was released on February 2022. February 22, 2019. Yeah, so many things have happened since 2019 to 2024. I'm mixing up gears already. So basically, it's a game that combines the person shooting with RPG roles and action uh, role playing game elements in a continuous open world, which visually to me is one of the big aspect of the game. The graphical open world, uh, where you're flying your mecha suits that are called javelins, and pretty much you can explore the whole world. The setting in Anthem is in the planet Coda, littered with advanced technology relics with harness and omnipresent energy known as the Anthem of Creation. Unstable relics can spontaneously terraform the section of the planet, mutate wildlife, change the local climate, create portals, and spawn monstrous creatures. Extremely unstable artifacts can envelop a significant area with destructive energy, storms, and creatures, rendering them barren and deadly. Such events are known as cataclysm. Human knowledge about the relics is limited, but it's believed that they were created by a godlike race called the Shapers, who abandoned the planet a millennia ago for unknown reasons, and the Anthem and the Shapers are revered by some of the source at all life. So, who are you? You are part of the crew of a famed freelancer named Haluk, who rallies an army of freelancers to enter the Heart of Rage and deactivate the Xenothafts. Among them is this you, a rookie undertaking the first mission. Accompanying them is Faith, Haluk's Cypher, and Wife. Shortly into the mission, all the other freelancers are killed, prompting Faith to call a retreat. With the player evacuating a wounded Haluk against his wishes, the resounding failure caused people to lose faith in the freelancers, whose ranks are decimated. 2 years later, the player has settled in the Fort of Tarsis, a frontier area between the Heart of Rage and Anthem, the Bastion's capital. Partnered with a young cipher named Owen, they make a living completing modest freelancers contracts for the locals. Owen aspires to be a free license despite his psychic ability being a hindrance to pilot the Javelin. So pretty much this is the introduction of Anthem. Anthem was originally started being developed right after the release of Mass Effect 3 in 2012 under the supervision of Casey Hudson, the executive producer of the original Mass Effect trilogy, and internally it was codenamed Dylan by BioWare. The working title was Beyond until 2017, and then the game was renamed as Anthem. Basically, what it was in public knowledge is that BioWare pretty much started from scratch with Anthem. Basically, they didn't have any strong ideas during the development of the game, and they all just wanted that the game was an action genre game that players could play in a co-op mode, basically like Mass Effect and Dragon Age. So there were so much attached for both titles. Obviously, working in a total of 7 games, of course, there should be some attachment. So basically, the Anthem concept was a mix of robotic enhancement, pretty much motivated by Iron Man, and many of the mystical aspects, including the Anthem and the unnatural things going on in the planet, were based on the Bermuda Triangle conspiracy and history. And that's where all the hazards and dangerous creatures came into the idea. So basically, 2 years later, after the game was started being developed, they find some overlapping as the BioWare team was already working on Dragon Age Inquisition and Mass Effect Andromeda, and taken to the fact that there were some big departure from the company that basically affected the progress on the development of Anthem. The team continued to struggle, obviously, with the Frostbite engine, which take that in note because we're going to be talking about Frostbite a little bit later. And jumping from 2014, we're heading to 2016 to 2017, which basically BioWare was kind of forced to make some final decisions on Anthem despite the game was still not ready. There was already signals that Anthem might fail this 2016 target year release. A demo was also in plans to be released so people could start playing it, but basically BioWare's wasn't ready also to put a demo back in the days that E3 was still a thing, and they wanted to do a formal presentation on E3 2017. And basically they did presented the demo, or they acknowledged it, that the game was originally called Beyond, and then shows Anthem. Actually, Anthem was a backup name, was not the original. Wasn't the original game that was chose, or the name that was chose for the game. I'm sorry, I'm mixing up because I'm reading my notes here. So basically, the game was released, and during E3 2019, Electronic Arts did what they were supposed to do. They're basically needed to acknowledge all the problems that the people were having during the game's launch back in February 2019. And basically, it is all part because Electronic Arts refused to delay the game more time, and they don't want to pass February 2019 just for Electronic Arts have the sales of Anthem by their fourth quarter 2018 or end of the fiscal year quarterly report. And they knew that the game amassed some hype, and people like kind of calling it the Destiny competitor or the Destiny killer. I really dislike the notion. I rather prefer that Destiny motivated companies to make up their own game to actually have action RPG multiplayer to be playable. And basically, the game was released with many problems. Basically, I'm saying basically so much in this episode. I'll try to avoid saying so much basically because basically I'm getting tired of saying basically. Anyways, the game got released, and despite the graphical elements of the game were top notch, people could notice that the experience from the demo to the full release of the game was really different in terms of content, stability of the game, and inconsistency with technical aspect that people were obvious about it. They couldn't hide that BioWare was still with a lot to do in terms of the post-launch content and post-launch patches that the game needs. And that is why I think it was CEO Andrew Wilson spoke the state of Anthem during E3 2019, basically 2 years after having a demo being presented on E3. 2 years later, at the same E3 event, Electronic Arts had to acknowledge that they are aware that Anthem didn't get the expectation that people and gamers were having about the game. So a little while later, there was an attempt and a new project of BioWare to basically reconstruct the game. But unfortunately, the project was cut short back in February 2020, almost at the beginning of the pandemic saga, the whirlwind. BioWare said that they were ending the seasonal updates, but this was because they wanted to reboot the game, and there goes why I said the remake the game basically. Some has compared how Square Enix worked with Final Fantasy XIV with a revised version on 2013 after the initial failure of the 2010 release of Final Fantasy. Electronic Arts and BioWare felt that they could have the same energy or the same luck with redeveloping Anthem while the game was still active, but unfortunately, at the exactly second anniversary of the game, BioWare confirmed and sent blog posts that they're discontinuing any future work on Anthem, promising obviously that the game will maintain his server for the foreseeable future. We know that Electronic Arts is not friendly on having game servers for games that pass certain life or go through multiple generations. So I always took with a really big or small grain of salt about the continuity of these servers on Anthem. Because unfortunately, even if you're playing solo, you still need these servers for the game allocate the resources and also mapping where the objectives and the enemies are. And if you are in a light service game, it is obviously that you need the internet to know where other players are. Despite all that and this long story that I think I'm clocking the 12, 13 minutes of starting recording the segment, basically, the game hasn't died. Here we are, 2024. We are 3 years later after that announcement. The game hasn't died. There has been some attention about the Anthem community with certain outlets, gaming outlets, that they were reviewing that the game is actually being played. And every time that Electronic Arts makes some sales within PlayStation, Steam, or Xbox, or whatever you can buy the game, every time that there's a special pricing, including these $5 where I took advantage of the game, $5, I think it was on Christmas of 2022, and got the game available for playing for part of my initial content when I started in spring 2023. No, I missed the date. I'm sorry. It's not 2023. I bought the game in the Christmas of 2020, and by 2021 I was already playing the game, and obviously I took advantage and made it as initial content for my channel. So I really love the game. I love the game despite, yes, noticing some mishaps here, but I was really impressed how the game looks. It looks so good. I have the PC version thanks to my Game Pass Ultimate subscription, which allows me to play some EA Play games. I also have the Xbox One version that I haven't started yet, so maybe we can do a replay of the walkthrough and having like a challenge to have all my javelins being maxed up. That will be a great future content. But returning about the notice that many gaming outlets were having on the Anthem community, it is true, the game refused to die, and some people, including myself, will love that BioWare pays some attention. I got in particular this article or this post in Reddit in the Anthem the Game subreddit, and the user that goes by OKPlenty500 laid out some facts that people need to know or remember or finally learn about what truly happened to Anthem. Of course, that went already on public information and probably become general knowledge. This post at Reddit really motivated me to doing this whole segment, and I was originally tempted to do it as a simple episode, but I think I shouldn't stretch much outside of what I can really stretch about it. So one of the points that people are always making about how troubleful was the development of Anthem is the Electronic Arts forced BioWare to use Frostbite. And according to the data, it's incorrect. BioWare using Frostbite, while encouraged by Electronic Arts, was entirely BioWare's own choice. It was our decision. Seth Line, I'm sorry, I'm reading the post on my perspective. I will read it as it is. It was our decision, Flynn told Kotaku in a recorded interview. We've been wrapping up Mass Effect 3 and we just shipped Dragon Age 2. We knew that our Eclipse engine that we shipped the Dragon Age 2 on was going to cut it for the future interaction of Dragon Age. It couldn't do open worlds. The render wasn't strong enough. Those were two big ones. We thought about multiplayer as well, as Eclipse was a single player only. We talked internally about three options. We could have burned down Eclipse and started something new internally. We could have gone in with Unreal Engine, or we could have picked Frostbite, which has which has shown some really promising results on the rendering side of things, and it was multiplayer enabled. So basically, this is incorrect talking points about the Anthem failures. So basically, BioWare's using a Frostbite was a planned thing, or it was constructing a whole new engine, or it was resorting on Epic Games with the Unreal Engine. Another point that it shouldn't be taken as a fact is that Electronic Arts forced BioWare to make Anthem a live service. It's incorrect. It was entirely BioWare's own choice to do Anthem as a multiplayer live service game. The irony here is that Electronic Arts respected BioWare too much and was too hands-off. This was a personal opinion about the author of this Reddit post, OKPlenty500, and I'm going to read what they meant here. Quote, but former BioWare developer James Owen, who recently departed the studio after working on Anthem as a narrative director, said that BioWare was never pushed to make the game by Electronic Arts. Speaking to Game Informer, Owen stated that he knows that there's a lot of conspiracy theory that Electronic Arts is the one behind Anthem, but that was never been the case. BioWare always had a lot of control over the kind of games it makes. Going into more depth on the relationship between BioWare and Electronic Arts, Owen says that I think Electronic Arts really respect what BioWare brings to it. I think that this point was to acknowledge or pretty much saying that Electronic Arts is not enforcing their ways on their inner studio, or at least in the case of BioWare. Yeah, but there are stories about Electronic Arts that were not proven wrong, or there's no space on discarding those stories. But I think in the case of Anthem, we got some data here. Another point, Electronic Arts didn't give BioWare enough time to make the game and or tamper heavily with development. This was marked of incorrect. The poster said Electronic Arts was incredibly hands-off and only reviewed any part of the game twice. As once that tells to BioWare to add flying back into the game after BioWare stupidly took it out. EA gave BioWare almost 7 years to develop the game, and BioWare bleep around doing nothing for almost 6 of those years. BioWare's management was so incompetent, developers had literally breakdowns at works. Yeah, there's a link in a Kotaku article about that described that point. So at this particular topic of the Anthem fallout, seems that it is a big one. Next point is Electronic Arts forced BioWare to give up on Anthem Next. Anthem Next is the code name for the project about redeveloping Anthem while the game was still alive and was going to be bring as a new patch, and future physical games will have just been the Anthem Next update. Of course, and I'm going to acknowledge and admit it, this particular point, I thought that it was a fact, but apparently it is not. Posters wrote incorrect. BioWare found that trying to fix the game, especially during COVID, was just too difficult, so they wanted to drop the development. They wanted to instead focus all hands on saving Dragon Age Dreadful, their next upcoming game, which was also in development trouble. Electronic Arts board members met to decide what to do, whether to give up the game, force BioWare to continue, or give the game to another EA studio. Ultimately, after reviewing the 2.0 progress, EA decided it was for the best to allow BioWare to give up. And here's the quote. 2020 was a year unlike any others, however, and while we continue to make progress against all our games project that BioWare is working from home during the pandemic has an impact on our productivity, and not everything we had planned as a studio before COVID-19 can be accomplished without putting undue stress on our teams. Game developers is hard. Decisions like this are not easy. Moving forward, we need to laser focus on our efforts as a studio and strengthen the next Dragon Age and Mass Effect titles while continuing to provide quality updates to Star Wars The Old Republic. And basically, this is the main topics that the poster OKPlenty500 make about clarifying some things that were factually wrong, and maybe the community went too high on these stories that were not entirely true. And the last point about the Anthem next being given up by BioWare, I thought that was a fact because I did read the blog arena when it was announced in February 2021. I think I was in a medical appointment, and I think I was still actively blogging in my own blog and another friend's blog, and I did read the blog post, but I found it so they weren't telling the truth or anything, but they were the way that you read the blog, at least I found it like they're just going the easy way out, man. And I couldn't blame him because Electronic Heart was probably on their asses, but we were proven wrong basically during this revelation. And basically Anthem was more of a mishap for BioWare rather than influences by Electronic Arts, which is a sad thing. Anthem has so much of a potential, and maybe things would have been different if Anthem Next could continue development. Maybe the pandemic was a big big problem for many companies. And side note, maybe it is why companies are still resisting on going remote works, even if your job can be done and you can work from home 100% because of the part of productivity. Man, I wish that BioWare's and Electronic Arts surprise us in the future soon. But anyways, I think that we have been so in depth about 3 topics in the same episode. Thank you so much for the support, and also inviting you again to watch the Forgottenlectures Fall of a Dynasty video that went live back on Monday.